Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to look at one way to enhance and supercharge your apprenticeship conversations with employers. This is what we're going to cover in the next 20 minutes or so. For those who aren't familiar with us here at MZ, our mission is very simple. We have lots of really good detailed information on the labour market and wider economic intelligence. And what we want to do is get that insight and that intelligence into your hands to help you make smarter, better, more informed decisions. So why are apprenticeships so important right now? Well, we're working with a lot of clients in the education space, and the number one issue that comes up right now is apprenticeships. We're all familiar, I guess, with the issues surrounding apprenticeships and the sector. We have the external structural changes to the apprenticeship system that I'm sure you guys know all about and don't need me to go over. But whether that be levy versus non-levy paying employers and issues, frameworks moving to standards, employees needing to use the digital apprenticeship service and needing help with that, Ofsted floating around. And then alongside that, of course, we know that the apprenticeship playing field has become a lot more open and competitive. And therefore, this means you guys need ways to express your values to employers and express the value of the employer employing apprentices. Now, here's a question that probably has hundreds of different answers. But what is it that employers actually want from an apprenticeship provider? Well, over the last couple of weeks, I've quickly asked this question to 25 or 30 of our clients. And these were the things that most commonly came up as responses from providers. I'm sure all of these things are familiar, and you'll probably have your own different common themes that are coming up. But it was interesting that lots of the same things were coming up as I was talking to our clients and talking to providers in relation to what they are hearing from their employers, both apprenticeships specific and just generally in terms of their relationships. If I kind of simplify things down from those responses and look at the themes in kind of general classifications, I find that some of them are delivery focused, that you guys can focus on and directly influence it internally, whether that be quality of provision, who's delivering, a flexible delivery model, where it's being delivered, all of those things that you're familiar with. And then the employer themselves, what the employer wants and what they see as important to their own operations, which is really what we're focusing on today. And one area in particular where MZ is very much able to help is in allowing you to measure and articulate the return on investment and increased productivity gains that your employers receive from apprentices. And that's the thing I want to get across today. So how do we do this? How do we at MZ measure the economic impact of apprenticeships? Well, we measure two things. Firstly, we look at an investment analysis, which is a concept everyone will be familiar with. What investment goes in and what do we get out of it? And secondly, we look at an economic growth analysis, which is where we measure the economic growth that can be particularly assigned to apprenticeships and apprenticeship delivery. So with a particular relevance to apprenticeships themselves, in our MZ Apprenticeship Economic Impact work, we measure that investment analysis from the perspective of the apprentices themselves. So what is the cost to the apprentice and what return do they get? Likewise for employers, we look at costs to the employer such as fees, the levy, but also time spent by their staff in supporting and mentoring the apprentice, as well as any other costs that employers accrue. And then what return do they get? What return on that investment do they get? And from an economic growth perspective, we look at higher economic growth and higher economic output and increased productivity in more detail. And just as a quick example of that, consider how lifetime earnings increase or change depending on qualification held in the UK. This graph's showing the differential in lifetime earning on average for vocational learners at entry level and level 1, and you can see the difference beginning there, even at those levels. And what our apprenticeship impact analysis does is take specific account of the human productivity gains associated with apprentices at all levels, and applying that through the model to get similar findings to what you see on screen for apprenticeship relevant provision. So as an example, typically we see that an 18-year-old apprentice will be on average more productive and moving up the earnings ladder much more quickly in their early career than other vocational learners at the same level and same age bracket. So here are some typical findings of one of our apprenticeship economic impact analysis. And just for clarification, the numbers on screen are actually dummy numbers. They're not from an actual provider study. So, as I mentioned earlier, the things that we look at, well, for the apprentices themselves, what return on investment will they receive over their working career? What are the costs that they incur, and what are those earnings benefits that they're going to see in future? Likewise, from an employer perspective, what's their return on investment? And this really is the key element and aspect that lots of our clients and provider partners are asking us about. How can you get across to employers the real impact on bottom line for the employer of taking on an apprentice or a cohort of apprentices? And then from a wider economic impact perspective, we look at a cohort of apprentices and look into their increased earnings, their increased productivity, the profit of their employers, and how those things then ripple and multiply through a regional economy. And we come up with a number there that helps us assign particular economic impact and particular economic benefit to the provision of apprentices. So in a very quick nutshell, that's one of the things we can do to start to help you explain to employers the economic benefit of apprentices and the economic impact that them investing in apprenticeships with you as a provider will bring to the regional economy, as well as those bottom line benefits and bottom line returns on investment that they will be receiving. Now, in our experience, this is becoming more and more crucial and critical. We know from our engagements with our provider partners that employers are looking ever closer at whether apprenticeships actually work for them. We all know that some employers are just taking the hit on the levy and are waiting to see how things pan out, because for one, they're not necessarily sure about what an apprenticeship actually means for them, and going back to earlier slides, what an apprenticeship actually means to their bottom line, which is of course a key aspect of all of their decision making. We looked earlier, or we mentioned earlier, those things that you guys can directly influence: quality of provision, delivery models, flexibility in delivery, all of those aspects that are your bread and butter. Well, by looking at economic impact and investing in that analysis, that is a different way to influence the debate with employers, and importantly, in a language that employers themselves fully understand. So my challenge to you guys is, in this increasingly competitive market, we all know that more and more providers from different sectors are entering the market and are looking for that business. The challenge to you is to really guide and work with your employers through this particular minefield. You can be sure that other providers are already or are considering using all of the available resources to them to win this business. And employers themselves are also looking at how to more fully understand their investments in apprentices, why they should do it, how they should do it, and why they should be working with you as a provider, and why not another provider. I'd really love to chat more about all of what I've touched on individually. So please do drop me a line individually, and we can talk about how to help overcome this challenge, how to help you get ahead of the competition, and how to retain your business and grow your business in the apprenticeship market. So please do drop me a line. You can see my details there on screen, and you'll receive those details as part of your webinar sign up. But in the meantime, thanks for listening to today's MZ webinar. I hope it's been useful. I hope it's posed one or two questions and one or two ideas have begun to develop about how you might be able to enhance and supercharge those conversations that you've already got going on with employers. Thanks again for your time.